Welcome to the Honest Field Guide podcast, a weekly show dedicated to winning in entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Ginger Birkenbuhl. I'm the CEO of Burt Creative, a leadership, brand strategy, and visual identity agency dedicated to helping scale brands and assist with their adaptability with the market. On my show, you get to eavesdrop in on intimate conversation with business leaders and inspired entrepreneurs, designed to give you tips and strategies so your own business can thrive. Subscribe and join me each week for laughter, inspiration, and honest stories. Hey everybody, welcome to my show, the Honest Field Guide podcast. My name is Ginger Birkenbuhl. I'm your host, and I really want to thank you for joining me today. You could be listening to any podcast in the world. Of course, everything's virtual now, but you've decided and chosen to listen to my show, the Honest Field Guide. And for that, I am extremely grateful. I would love it if you could subscribe to my show on Spotify or Apple. And please, if you can, leave me a great review on Apple Podcasts, because great reviews means that more people listen to my show, which means more people actually listen to my guests, which is why I'm here to talk about amazing people on my show. And I have an amazing person on my show right now. But before I do that, I just want to sort of give, I always do this on my show. I always talk about why I have this person on my show, because I don't have just anyone on my show. I'm very particular about who I want on my show. And it's because the people that come on my show are fascinating. They're interesting. They're doing amazing things in the world. And they've also found their way to me, and I found their way to them. And so there's actually a relationship, some cool thing going on. So if you've been listening to my show, you know that I always talk about my band, Utah Carol, country band. I'm always talking about music. If you've ever read any of my essays in Fast Company magazine, you will know that all of my essays accompany a curated music playlist, because I think in lyrics, I think in song. I don't know why this is. I don't know why I do this, but I can't help it. I'm always like, whenever I'm writing something in an essay, a song lyric comes to my brain. And when a song lyric comes to my brain, I put it in a playlist, and that accompanies my Fast Company article. For example, I just recently published one on ageism in the workplace, and I have a whole bunch of amazing songs about looking back, reminiscing, nostalgia, and, staying young, things like that. So just check it out if you want to take a look. It's on YouTube Music. It's really interesting. I'm also married to a person who's a musician and songwriter in my band, my husband. And I also birthed a child. I have 3 children, but I birthed one who happens to be a jazz musician at the Manhattan School of Music. So somehow music has really been a part of my life, and it's been a big part of, growing up in my life as well. I love music. So here's the thing. Now that you're here, I want to help you understand what this actually has to do with my guest. So years and years and years ago, I was invited by one of my advisors. Her name is Christy Hefner. And she said, hey, listen, I really want you to meet this amazing woman. Her name is Juliana Richardson. And she is the founder of the History Makers, which is a nonprofit preserving archival collections of African-American video oral histories. And Juliana at the time, she needed an extra set of hands on set as she was working with the magnificent legend, Berry Gordy. And the show was called An Evening with Berry Gordy. Okay. It was this stunning experience. It was so out of this world. And, I was mingling with the stars, but I was also working, but they weren't really basic stars. They were huge, huge, huge Motown history stars, the greats of Motown. It was fantastic. And it was like a parade of the who's who. And it was warm, it was welcoming. And I was like, I just felt so honored, but I was also working, right? I mean, it wasn't just me like staring. I was actually down and dirty doing a job, right? Surrounded by incredible Black excellence, literally of the highest order. I don't even know if I've ever seen, like in today's environment of young people, I feel like, we need to have that all the time, right? And that's one of the reasons I have my guest on. But I was standing on the sidelines and I was like, oh my God, like, look at all this. This is so incredible. And next to me was a man who wasn't awestruck at all. He was observing, quietly watching and taking notes. I could tell he was taking notes. And I was like, my husband and I were like, I wonder who this person is. So I turned around and I said, hi. I introduced myself, what's your name? And he was explaining to me about the work he'd been doing and the projects he was working on. And of course, I happened to see him on stage at the time as well, because he was working on stage, which I realized I'm like, oh, wow, he's the man that was on stage. And I've kept up with this person for years. I've been following him for such a long time, right? And, Mr. Ray Chu, it's been a long time since he has been where I met him and where he is now. I mean, he's been in the music business for almost his entire life, and we're going to get to it. But I'm going to read a little bit about Mr. Chu. Okay. Ray Chu is a renowned music director, producer, and composer. He's the music director for season 33 of Dancing with the Stars, premiering, by the way, on September 17th, 2024. In addition to Dancing with the Stars, Ray's television and event music direction includes high-profile television shows such as American Idol, I Can See Your Voice, and TV's longest-running syndicated variety show, It's Showtime at the Apollo. He has also directed music for tentpole network events, including the Macy's 4th of July Fireworks Spectacular, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, the Primetime Emmy Awards, and President Barack Obama's inaugural neighborhood ball. Ray's illustrious career as a music director, producer, and composer spans generations and platforms, including studio recordings, television shows, and stage performances with icons Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack, Shaka Khan, Aretha Franklin, and contemporary legends Alicia Keys, Rihanna, Robin Thicke, and Lizzo. Ray recently served this past August as music director for the 50th anniversary of Harlem Week, and he's about to release a debut single, Jam, featuring an all-star lineup including Stephanie Mills, MC Light, and Dougie Fresh, with additional production and appearances by DJ Kid Capri. The single is a vibrant precursor to Ray's upcoming album, My Journey, set for release in the first quarter of 2025. Ray, welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So before we talk about your creative work, do you remember that night, Ray, with an evening with Berry Gordy? Or what was you were working on the show that night. What do you remember most about that remarkable night?
Well, the first thing is that it's remarkable to be engaged with an icon like Berry Gordy, and that I was given the responsibility at his calling, because he could have chosen anybody to do that, to be in charge of honoring him and organizing and stuff, and he chose me, and it was an honor to do that. Berry Gordy, you can't understate his contribution to the music fabric of America. All right. And so it was just great to do that and to get to know him and engage and talk with him and chat it up. So that was cool.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was my first time actually working on a set like that, because I'm not a live musician, live performer, working the background person. So it was a learning experience, and Juliana taught me a lot at that event. And I learned lessons that have actually served me today in my own career. So, I want to actually start a little bit earlier with you, Ray, because you've had an incredible life, right? I mean, since you were a little boy, you had to have been a prodigy. You had to have been a prodigy, because I read that you were discovered at 6 years old, right? So can you share the stories about your early beginnings, your family, and then kind of, rolling into a little bit about your schooling?
Yeah, my father was a musician, and he played piano and vibes. When he came out of the Air Force, he initially tried to pursue a professional career, but that wasn't for him. He had a family to support, so he went right to work in the advertising field. However, he was active as just a musician all the time. We were always playing in the house. And so, very early on, that's what I knew. I knew there was a piano house, and he's playing all the time, and that was something I gravitated to. And, very early, he would sit me on his lap and I'd play. And then he's like, wow, this kid's got something. So they took me over to age 5 over to, at the time we were living in the projects, the Grant projects, which is right off of 125th Street and Broadway. For those of you who know New York City, that is right off of the campus of Columbia University. At the time, the Juilliard School was on the campus of Columbia University. So my mother took me right over there and said, hey, with the advice of somebody, said, hey, you should, have a look at, my son. And they did a number of musical tests and said, oh, wow, this kid's got perfect pitch. He's got all this, instant recall, all kinds of terminology that they would apply, to some talented kid. And then they gave me a scholarship to start my music study. It was the Vladimir Harwood Scholarship. And so that really started the ball rolling. I got a lot of great mentors. My father's Air Force buddy, his name is Merle Saunders. And so he turned professional, and he was doing a lot of wonderful things. Very influential in my life. From that music program, I went to the Harlem School of the Arts. Great program under the leadership of Dorothy Maynor, who was, who instilled excellence in that school. She said that young kids from Harlem should not have to go out of Harlem to get an excellent musical education. She did that. Harlem School of the Arts was excellent study. They had, classical jazz. They had every kind of, study that was, but it again, it centered on excellence. Dorothy Maynor was an opera singer. That was her background. And she would, it was a small staff and a small group of students that she worked with. Eventually it would grow to be pretty large and substantial, but that was a very important school to me. And so we were in the projects, and then at age 7, we moved up to the Bronx. And we thought that was the country. So I was like, oh, we're moving up to the country, right? From the project, that was the country. So, but I would go down to the Harlem School of the Arts every day. And so I was in music study, and my sister was in dance study. And also one of the teachers at the time was Arthur Mitchell. So that was before he started his own dance theater of Harlem.
Wow. But
we were always in music study and dance study. It was music education was important to my mother. My mother was she was just everything. She worked civil rights. She worked 2 or 3 jobs. She would, worked with youth organizations. And she was mother to a lot of young people, and we got to know we that was just our life. In our home, our little home in the Bronx, kids would come and kids that had trouble in the family or something. And the next thing we know, they're living in our house, or somebody's something happened to somebody's wife, whatever. It was our home was open. Like that. And so we got a sense of knowing what community meant to our lives. And that was very important to me because, again, she was very influential, as well as my father, in just my growth as a human being and how music would apply. And so that was kind of the start of the journey. And I'll take a pause here so that you can ask your next question, because I'll just go on and on.
But I mean, it's good because I can tell, and this is going to be one of my questions a little bit later. It's obvious your parents instilled in you philanthropy. I mean, and it wasn't called philanthropy back then. You know what I mean? It was just, taking care of family and community and people. But, that's sort of, what I'm hearing is where you got your decision to dedicate your life to helping other people, especially young people, because you saw that. That's your vision. That's what you grew up looking at. That's what you
Yeah.
experienced. And I love hearing that. So, I
Well,
want
I'll respond to that.
Okay,
Because,
yes,
and now
please.
I'm not hearing your next question because at the heart, and she instilled in me, at the heart of philanthropy, and that's a wonderful word, but is altruism. Altruism is at the heart of it. It says that you feel that it's important to seed the soil that you're standing on. All right. And seed, and know that the soil you're standing on is on the graves and shoulders of others who've done the same. That's at the heart of it. And so it says, each one teach one, touch another hand, lift somebody up, do something for the world. All right. And that was at the heart of it.
I love that. Do something. That's like our mantra now. Do something. I love it. And I'm curious. You describe your very early musical education. When you were in it, did you feel different? Did you know that you were in a special situation? Did you or are you just rolling with it because you grew up like that? Like, how did you, sometimes, you'll find yourself in rooms and places and maybe you were too young to feel that. And you're saying, wow, it's almost like when I think about Lupe Fiasco, he was interviewed years ago and he said he'd look out his window from the projects in Chicago and he'd see the glistening city and the lake. And he said, I'm going there because where I'm at now is not where I want to be or where I should be. There's something else. And then when he got there, he's like, wow, his mind was blown. Did you have that experience or were you just like, this is my musical life? I feel the same.
Yeah, there was, it's always been one wonderful corridor for me,
Okay.
and I've only saw one goal, and that was big, and that wasn't because anybody forced me to do it. This is what I've always wanted to do, and so all of the things along the way have helped, feed into that. So it was a dream, it was a goal, it was a daily goal and tasks that contribute to it. All of the music education every day, practice. Yeah, that could get a little tedious and kind of wear on you. But if that's all part of your dream, then it's all it's all in the ocean that you're swimming in.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my mantra is, hey, listen, we're in the ocean of life. Yeah, you jump in, you're swimming. You can pick your head up, but you better keep stroking. And so
I love it. I love it.
That's what I do.
I love it. I love mantras. I have new mantras now when I'm running at my club. I have to have them now. It's I'm in a place in my life where I have to constantly feed myself. I have to have my own inner voice feeding positive mantras all the time, because we got a lot going on in America right now. So I gotta put up a force field, to protect my creative energy. I just have to. So I love that you said that. So I'm trying to see the gap, right? It's like it seems like you went, right from school to working with superstars. Like, I'm like, where is the stuff in the middle? Like you studied classical music as well. I mean, you weren't studying, gospel, exclusively or jazz or R&B. Like, you were studying classical music. I read that you even went to the Manhattan School of Music, which is actually where my son goes. But yeah, he's a junior there now. But how did you end up going from, being 6 years old to working with superstars?
Well,
Like,
I'll tell
what?
you that all through my my musical formative years and being in study. So I went to every music institution in New York, every school. My mother, she'd always, and then the summer she'd have me in the program. She'd always have find somewhere to go. And then I would also be in private lessons, and all my uh, private school, private teachers, one on one, they were all professionals. So they would take me. They were in the field working. Coleridge Taylor Perkinson was the first black music director on network TV. He was my teacher. Warren Smith, Merle Saunders, all of the members of the Boom Repercussion Ensemble, led by Max Roach. And so I was in the company of all these great jazz legends and people like that. And they would sit me right, at an early age. They would take me when they were doing, TV shows and when they were doing recording sessions. And so I got to see what the professional life looked like. I was already mentored by people doing it. And while I was continuing, formal study and private study. So we're already working on the quilt of my music life and education. 6 through 10, study, homeschooling arts, Third Street music, a man's school of music. I've been study. At age 11, I went down to a music program at A&T State University, now, which is not necessarily known as a music school, but it did have a music program. I'm at 11. My mother puts me on the plane, sends me down there for the summer, and all of the young people in the music program are, they're like high school level, So
And
they
you're
used to
like
call me
11.
little man. I'm 11 years old, and they're all 16 and 17, and and I have some funny stories because I'm on the campus, like 11 years old, kind of feeling like the college campus vibe, and the historically black college, and so there everybody's yeah, we're doing music classes all day, and then at the end of the night they're like all dating and going to the women's dorm, and I'm like, hey, I want to do that too.
And they're like,
And they're like,
nope.
oh, little man, this ain't it's a
Gotta
little
wait a
above your
while.
head, little man. And I was trying to figure it out. And I already knew. I was like, I like them sisters, man. Come on, somebody give me a shot. Anyway, so
Spill all the tea,
okay,
please.
so
Spill it all.
11, and then when I find things really, really accelerated when I got into the High School of Music and Art, LaGuardia High School of Music and Art, because up until then, I had been like, one of the most talented kids in the neighborhood, always, this little talented kid. When I got in that school, by the way, it was elevated because everybody in that school was the most talented kid in the neighborhood or somewhere in that level. There were a lot of talented kids in the school at that time. Was Nat Adley Jr., Marcus Miller, Omar Hakim, Lisa Fisher, blah blah blah. There was Steve Jordan was now with the Rolling Stones, and so there were a lot of young talented kids. As a matter of fact, and I'll speak briefly on this. There was and this is I'm gonna give him an ode to. His name was Carlton Green, and he's important because he played tuba. Now he was this charcoal black kid, and you never saw him in the stool, never saw him without, he carried this tuba with him everywhere.
Tubas are heavy.
Bathroom, everywhere. You never saw, and he was always, and in between everything, he would, everybody would have, you have, classes, in between classes, and you have a free period. He would be practicing all the time. And I was like, wow, I thought I practiced a lot. And so again, it helped elevate my understanding of, wow, okay, this is, it's next level, and that it's not just you, that talent, and so one of my other mantras is in this, and I didn't make this up. Talent is distributed around. It's distributed by the Maker, all right, by our lovely God who loves us, and however you see Him. It's distributed through different people, through different races, religions, everything. Talent is. However, opportunity is not equally distributed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and
True.
so therein lies some of the differences on how the layout of the world. So yes, I learned the difference between, again, talent and achievement. Talent and achievement. You can have lots of talent, and achievement is the bridge. You have to cross that to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the where you develop a work ethic and you develop a sense of yourself learning, because nobody can achieve for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you can talk about it, people can be in your ear, in your face, all that, but the only one that's going to achieve it is for you. Now I'm going back to Carlton Green. So Carlton Green, and I'll say this to Amen, and there might be an article or two on him, something, not a whole lot, but I'll tell you that the story of Carlton Green is important to me. Again, Carlton was the most, I would say he was one of the most talented and one of the most hardworking kids in that school on tuba. Now, by the way, it wasn't a very sexy instrument at that time.
Listen, I love tuba.
Everybody's playing, everybody had bands and all kinds of really cool stuff. It was a great atmosphere at the High School of Music and Art. But he was in the senior orchestra, and the senior orchestra was almost all white. Okay, I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the senior, and it was a great orchestra. By the way, when I got in as a freshman, again, I was also studying percussion. So I said piano, percussion, which included all the vibes and mallets. And again, my father played vibes, so I played that well. And so in high school, they put me right into the senior orchestra as a freshman. They said, no, this kid is good. Put him right in. So now, again, I go back to this kid, Carlton Green. At high school, people around the world would come to see this phenomenal young man on the tuba. He was world class in high school. I mean, he was probably better than a lot of the those who were already in orchestras around the world. He was just really that good. And so right out of high school, he was recruited to go and to join the Italian Symphony Orchestra, some grand thing in Europe. They wanted him right away. Wanted to get him right away. But emotionally, he was not ready for it. He had only been married in his whole life to this tuba. And I kid you not, he took it everywhere. So that is all he knew. And he got into an environment, and again, I'll go back to how my mother was so important. I don't know what his home life was, but when he got out there, he couldn't handle it. The racism, all kinds of the stuff that would, come from him, being, this one speck in this white world. And he had a breakdown. Not only did he have a breakdown, we had to have a friend of mine, Howard Johnson, who also played tuba, and had Howard Johnson. Now you'll find a lot about him. He had to go to Europe and get him, and so, and when they brought him back, he was never the same. Years later, I would see him homeless, walking the street. And it was just such a shock to me, to see this, because I just revered this guy and his work ethic and his excellence and his talent, and to see him, walking Midtown. The only thing when I saw him, the only thing that could come out of my mouth was, "Hey," I was like, "Hey, Carlton Green." It's like, like, where's your tuba, right? And again, I'm asking a homeless guy, where's his tuba, right? I was like, I just didn't even know what words to put together. That's how shocked I was. And he said something, it just resonated. He said, you know, blah, 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 and I'll never touch the tuba again. You know, it's like, this guy will never touch the tuba again. Now, I said a lot. That story
It's tragic.
resonates with
It's
me.
tragic. It's
Yeah,
tragic.
yeah, it is. And I'm gonna close up the story. That resonates with me because it just shows me that in life, it was a life lesson. And again, if you don't have the kind of wonderful support systems that I had, it just showed me what a wonderful thing that is to have, my mother, the father, and uncles and people, support apparatus that, again, talent is not enough, and you can work yourself to a bone and a grind and you can be great. And that ain't enough either. It's a multiplicity of things that you need to kind of, just navigate life. Music and the music business and all about that stuff, that's one aspect. Yes, it is my life and it's what I'm about. However, how, the pages that you turn have many things going on in your life. You can't, you can't just, tell the bill players, well, I'm a talented person, so wait for me to pay the bill. It don't work like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'll let you get on.
I mean, I love that because, you know, I talk about this a lot with my children, and it's hard. They come from a more privileged environment that I came from, obviously, as I'm sure your children do too. We're moving forward. We're moving up and beyond, past our 400 years. We're keeping going and striving for more. And I talked to them about this, and it's almost hard for them to understand it. And I have to be careful sometimes of not sort of, placing my own, history and my own background and upbringing onto them, because they just don't even know what it looks like, but I hear your story really well. It resonates because, and it actually brings me to a question. It's a great lead in. I'm just sort of wondering, so he went abroad and you never did when you were younger. I mean, like, were you thinking to yourself, wow, I'd like to go there too? I mean, what is the benefit of going abroad as a young person in music school? Does it actually help a student even in a jazz environment to go study in Amsterdam or Paris or London? What's the point?
Well, in his story, it didn't work out too good.
Yes,
Straight out of high
obviously.
school, going at, he didn't
Yeah.
have. But what happened to me now, in contrast, in my, so as a young person in the high school of music and art, I got in as a freshman, and I started already working with old, kids. They're already starting to do gigs around town, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. So I started working with with bands around town. Actually, again, my teachers were all professionals, so I started doing off Broadway while I was in high school. Started doing, matter of fact, I was doing every kind of gig I could find, bar mitzvah, party, anything. All right. And so at age 16, by the time I got to when my junior year, I was also let me roll back. While I was in high school, I started studying also at the Manhattan School of Music. They had a prep division. So again, I'm studying. I'm in more and more music study every day on piano and percussion, and arranging and every other kind of thing I could get on. As a matter of fact, I have a great, a great aptitude for instruments. So in high school, I would just roam the halls sometimes and go and poke my nose into one of the instrument rooms and just pick up another instrument. And because listen, you give me an hour with the instrument, I'll figure out I'll be able to play something. All right, I'm gonna play something. So I tried that with the saxophone and this and that and a trumpet and and bass and I because I also learned and by the way, I'll go back to when I was in the Harlem School of the Arts. I also studied, I was in the choral unit, the youth choir, and I was also studied violin and cello. My violin experience was brief. And it was because I liked the instrument. It was, but you have to, there's a little learning curve before you can really make it sound like something. I'd say another instrument like that is the saxophone. Saxophone, when you first start, you're gonna sound horrible until you get finally get a good tone out of it. So the violin, I was doing okay, and then one day I dropped the violin. And to the horror of my teacher, who was this, she was a European teacher, and she was like, "Oh, no, that was so horrible," that she, admonishment me. She was like, "Well, from now on, at least for the next foreseeable future, you're gonna hold that violin, in your, the position is on the left shoulder, and and as you do that, you hold it. It's supposed to be supported by your shoulder and your chin, right?"
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And she made me hold that for the next few weeks. And I was like, am I gonna ever get to play this thing? And it just felt like that's all she had me do was holding this thing. And then she said, yeah, at one of the weeks, she said, "And you'll never drop that violin again."
Respect for instruments is important.
Right, but she said that. And I said, "Well, that's true, because I'll never play it again." And the hell with that. So that was my violin experience. I also studied the cello, and it lasted a little bit. But all of these, help to influence my music aptitude, my music approach to things, my musical understanding. Mm-hmm. So all those instruments I studied. So in high school, at age 16, in my junior year, while I was also in Manhattan School of Music, my buddy, Henry, who he'd always go pull me into every time there was a show somewhere we go. We were like really young go-getters. There wasn't a minute we wasn't doing something. If we wasn't studying, after study we go, "Oh, there's a show downtown. Let's go down there, jazz show, this and that." We would go everywhere. Didn't matter where it was at. We would be there. And so this day he says, "Hey, this is an audition for Melba Moore down at some studio." And so he says, let's go down there. So I went down there, and he said, "You should audition." I was like, "Okay." So I wasn't sure whether it's piano or drums. Either one I would have been perfectly prepared for. And they said it was piano. And so, great. Okay. And so it was after school, and all of the other auditioners had already done. I was the last one. And so I get there, and then, they said, okay, they put the music up, and I take a look at it. And then he said, "You ready?" I said, "I'm ready." She comes over, and she sings Pearly and I've Got Love, stuff that she did while she was on Broadway, and another song. It did about 3 or 4 songs. And they said, "Okay, cool." And I left. And I think before I got to the end of the, out the building, somebody comes up and says, hey, listen, she really likes you, And I was like, "And I really like her." Somebody says, like, "I love you," and you're like, "And I love you too." I'm saying that because I'm like, hey, I'm still in high school,
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, they want you to work with it. I was like, "Oh, that'd be great." I'm thinking they want me to like do some gigs around town, on the weekends. I'm like, that would be great. I love that. And actually the schedule called for me it was full time, grown people was out of town. And so I was like, wow. And so I took it home. I took the schedule home to my mother. And I said, "Mom, I really want to do this." And then, and I'll give you an idea of my mother was a forward thinker. She was a maverick. She was many things. She used to take us out on civil rights marches while we're a child of the 60s. And me and my sister, she would have us out there because she wanted us to know what was going on, what we were doing, and the work that she was doing. All right. So we wasn't watching this on TV. We were in it. All right. And the marches on Columbia University, all that stuff. So again, my mother, I said, Mom, I really want to go. And she said, and the reason why I paused is because that's just about how long she did. She said, okay, go. I was like, wow. She said, go. She said, you've been preparing your whole life for this. Do it.
Wow.
All right. How about that? How about that?
Would you consider
16,
that?
How about that?
Would you consider that? Would you consider that your first big break? Because that was actually one of my questions. That was it. That was the one.
Yeah.
Did you?
It.
And you knew? Did you know?
Well, and listen, I was like, again, I'm in ocean swimming.
But let me tell you why I'm asking. The reason I'm asking, because I talk about this a lot with young people, especially young aspiring artists and musicians and people in the creative spaces. And frankly, this applies to anyone that's trying to move forward. When you're not paying attention, and this the assumption is that you're prepared already. Okay, you're already prepared. But when you're not paying attention, when you are, I don't even want to use the word distracted, but if there's any kind of blockage in your head, if you're not open to new experiences, different cultures, different people, people with different skin colors, people that talk differently, you might miss the portal. Right. You didn't miss the portal. And of course you had a family that, that said that was there for you. Right. I mean, you weren't on your own, like you said earlier. You had people to guide you. But I'm just saying, even with some guidance, you can miss a portal because you're blocking things. Did you actually know, like, this is a big deal?
Yeah.
I'm not going to miss it.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was a big deal.
Okay.
It was a big deal. And I was like, wow, because even me, I was kind of surprised. She said, go. I was expecting her to say, no, you better stay and finish school. And so she did say, you have to finish school. So I went on and got, diploma and then, was still studying at the Manhattan School, although I didn't complete their full thing and get a degree, but it's okay.
Maybe they'll give you an honorary degree.
Yeah, they probably need to.
I think they should. Anyway. I'll have a conversation with someone about that, actually.
Good. Okay.
For the culture.
You. Appreciate it.
For the culture.
Believe in something, fill my soul, then fall to pieces when I get old. I should be far away, take me home, hold me in your arms, I'm so alone.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, it's something that I noticed with some young people, Ray, and I don't know if you notice it yourself, that there's this, some young people, I'm not going to throw them all under the bus, but just sort of this, I don't know if it's because there's too much social media and there's 24-hour information that's actually counteracting what parents are telling their children, if parents are saying anything. But I feel like they think there's one way to do things, and it's like, no. You got to be, it's not even about a sponge. You just have to have nothing blocking you from seeing the possibilities, or even not even trying to see, just going with stuff. You said you were running around the streets of New York, going to shows, hanging out, playing music, opening doors and rooms. And I mean, these are things that need to be instilled in young people, especially in creative spaces. And I feel like you did that, which I feel is actually beautiful. And I wonder even now, if I move on to another topic, when I think about this, you're a Black man in America. I'm a Black woman in America. And I worry now that there isn't enough representation in these music schools to actually help counteract what's happening in social media and help support what's not happening in the family, to sort of help children and young people understand, like, look, the rules haven't changed. The way to get there maybe, but the rules haven't changed. So how do you actually speak to that with a young person today? How do you talk about this?
Well, you're right. The rules have not changed. And it's important for people and young people to know that, the path that you are taking, again, this goes back to my upbringing. The path that you're taking has been paved with the blood of others. And so and on the backs of others. So it's important for you to also, take heed of that. Don't take it lightly. And look around you as things are happening, your environment, the world today, what's going on, and how do you make your mark? What do you want to do? And so, and that's again, and I'm glad you brought up the social media thing, because people get too caught up into what other people think of them and what they think you should do, and then you want to do what you think they think that it's important, and then it just gets all twisted, and then your goals get twisted, because now your goal is to get likes. Wait. Your goal is to get likes? What is that?
Where's the money?
What is that?
Where's the money?
To have imaginary people like you, people that you don't have any relationship with. That's your goal? No, that's not your goal. And I've had to have this talk with my own daughters, and just saying, hey, listen, don't get caught and twisted in the wrong thing in your path.
I want to ask you about being a music director, right? So do you think is that actually only your title? Because I feel like spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and like energy wise, you're more than a music director. And we could spend all day defining this, but I guess just moving a little bit more forward, just say, yes, I'm a musical director, but I feel like inside you're an artist. But the thing is, a musical director, you have to suppress an ego. It's like you can't have an ego. I almost feel like you have to have a servant leadership or something. Can you talk about what it takes to be a musical director? Because I actually feel like that's the one space in the music business where you can actually make a living and you can stay in it for a long time, way past the visual prime of a young person on stage, right? And you can have a career as a music director, I think. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to be a musical director, and how are you able to take your own conceit and ego out of everything you're doing to be so successful? Because that's the only reason why you're successful. I know it.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. At the heart, the first musician, artist, and as a music director, I got instilled at a young age leadership qualities. They're not born; they are bred. They are, they have to be refined. They have to be defined, refined. I've had a lot of bumps along the way, learning how, to be in a leadership position. I will say that after my work with Melba Moore at 16, at age 19, I was rediscovered by Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson, who empowered me as a young musician, as a young musical director, to take the baton and work with them as their music director. So that was another page turning, part of my life that really, really took me somewhere else.
So wait, let me ask you, you were musical director under Melba Moore, and then you continued to be, or did you transition to musical director under?
I was in the band, in Melba's band. Sometimes I worked as a music director, but not all the time. We had a Melba band, right? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes she would, take me separately, and I would conduct or do some things for her. When I was started working with Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson, I was their music director, and they empowered me, to be the arranger. And they brought me into the New York session scene, of which they were very, well respected.
The New York session scene.
I was trying to find the word that encompassed all that they were here in New York. First of all, Valerie Simpson, besides them being two of the most prolific songwriters ever during their Motown years, when they're after Motown, they started their own careers as artists. They kept writing big, huge hits. Mm-hmm. But by the way, Valerie Simpson was the number one jingle singer, black or white, in New York during that time. And so she would let me come and hang out with her and go to these, while she's doing commercials, because the commercials, jingles, you hear and sing about it, but you're like, how do you get into that world? And yes, that there was definitely a glass pane, and wall, because it's like, wow, how do you get into something that is, first of all, so, it's definitely on the other side. Well, somebody, and it's a big word I use, is, you can have opportunity, but you have to have access to opportunity. So somebody giving you access is a big deal. You can have talent, you can have an opportunities on the other side of that door until somebody gets you the right key to open that door. You're still on the other side.
Woo!
And
Yes.
and they did that for me.
It's so real. I mean, you mentioned they brought you in on the session world. And when I hear the session world, I think I hear in my head like, oh, yeah, Nashville sessions, the session players. And that's what you're talking about, right? It's just a New York version of that, right?
Well, New York was the version of that. By the way, remember, the entire music industry was New York. It started spreading, because all the record companies were New York. Everything was New York. Mm-hmm. Then it started spreading out. Nashville had a scene, but it was, it was kind of local country back in the 60s. It really wasn't the Nashville that we know today. Neither was California. California, Los Angeles, everybody came to New York. All right, 50s wow, and you were 60s.
And you were right there.
And so, doing jingles, Madison Avenue was right there. All of the major advertisers, they were, they had not yet gotten to Chicago or anywhere else. So everything was New York. And so to be in that scene was, first of all, it was highly competitive, and you just had to be a badass, right, in many ways. And so here I was, this young badass, and Valerie started, I'd never done a jingle, and she introduced me to the right people. And before I knew it, I went from 0 to 100. I kid you not. My first jingle, and I'm going to give her a shout out, was Debbie McDuffie.
Stunning.
And Debbie McDuffie, and she was a black jingle producer, which was rare as well. And she called me to do, I remember it was a Dodge Motors commercial. And that was my first one. And then I was like, wow, this was pretty cool. I like to do more. And then before I know it, before 2 weeks is up, I'm like doing them every day. And then they started building up 2 or 3 of them every day. And I was like, wow, this is like incredible. Now I didn't have to say wow, because I'm like, wow. Yeah, so now I'm like a
I saw your childhood face when you just did that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, wow. And I'm one of the top studio musicians in New York. And
how old were you?
Also, and then I started, and I was 19. And then I started doing recordings with, because Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson were producing people like Diana Ross. So now I'm working on the Diana Ross The Boss album, and then I started doing sessions with Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack, Grover Washington Jr., Glass Knight the Pip, Shaka Khan, Teddy Pendergrass. I was in the studio every day.
Wow.
Every day, all day. And then on the weekends, we would, because Nick and Val, they had their schedule such that, they would go and do their road show on the weekends, because they didn't like to stay out all the time. So they would do, so I'm in the studio Monday through Thursday or Friday, and then on the road Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and come back. So I was full-time, all in. And so there you go. That was my life for many years.
I mean, the thing too that I'm hearing is you got to work, you locked down, you locked in, and you were not ever starstruck. I mean, you really delivered. Obviously, you delivered the work. It's the talent piece, but you also were very professional. And my guess is, and this actually leads me to my next question, you were probably and the word didn't exist then, but you were entrepreneurial thinking. You were an entrepreneur. You were figuring out how to see vast ecosystem and connections, and you were, making it all work, and people recognize you for doing it. And I love that, because I feel like we're in an environment now where your experience as an entrepreneur, and maybe I'm putting this in your mouth, but I don't think I am, because you've got a lot of businesses. So that type of experience now is critical to the success of anybody in the music business. If you can't be an entrepreneur, and I know social media is like a hellscape, it really is a hellscape. But you have to have this. And it actually makes me want to ask you, you have a bunch of companies, and I'd love for you to name your companies. As a person in the music business, a very successful music business person, do you have your own intellectual property, and how are you protecting it? But first, tell me about your businesses, but I really want to understand the ownership mindset that you have to have by now. Maybe you didn't have it then because you were working for other people, right? But so talk about those businesses you have, and within those businesses, what do you own? I know you own the business, but in terms of your intellectual property, the creative part, that's what I want you to.
Well, I think the first thing I learned was that, especially after being, at a young age, I was also signed to Capitol Records and Sony. I had a few record deals. And then did a glance at those contracts, they were pretty lopsided. It was basically the 80-20. And now we look at it, we call it the plantation deal. All right, so where the record company,
they're
they
everywhere.
own the masters, and and you're basically working for them. And so, in answer to your question, learning early on what that was like, then yes, especially this day and age, where everybody, has learned the value of owning your own masters, and your brand, and owning yourself as a brand, your image, everything that it takes to make an enterprise of you. All right, then you should be the prime beneficiary of it. All right. Yes, in the older days, you did have help and a big lift, possibly from a record company, because it takes an understanding about the systems for you to understand that in any system they're only going to focus on the top 5%. So you could be signed to, and as a matter of fact, the bigger the company, the bigger the the bigger the gap, because if they have, let's say, a company like Sony, and they have let's say they have conservatively 100 and something artists signed at one time. Let's say 100. The resources are only going to go to the top 5% still. All right, the rest of you got to figure out how to make a mark. Maybe one or two will jump out. Maybe, but if you're not proven to be in the top 5%, then you're just part of their assets. Some of which can be written off, some of which could be just filler for the company. It's many different viewpoints of what that means to have 100 people on your roster and all the resources only go to about 5%. All right. And that's just the reality of it, and so anyway, knowing that, and back to your question, in this, especially if we roll ahead to where we are now, yes, I am very happy that young artists are owning their own masters, their own images, their own everything, and finding a way as independents to make their mark. And you know what? So be it. If it works out, good. Then I win. If it don't work out, I'm certainly no lesser than being in the 95% at some big label. You know what I mean?
am not convinced that there is a purpose in signing to a label, right? I mean, we launched our band. I launched the band rather, because I have a business woman. I'm a business, comma man, as Jay Z would say. I launched the band like a business in 1997, and still we get royalty checks from songs that we placed in advertising and film because of that. And there's no way those checks would be coming if we had been signed to a label, which of course we had a lot of inquiries to sign to a label. And I said, for what purpose? Because I didn't know then what I know now, but I had an instinct that I wasn't going to maybe be the top 5%. Like I'm not going to be the Beatles. I could aspire to it. Maybe I'll get lucky and hit one day. However, in the meantime, until the moment comes where my song becomes a hit, I'm keeping everything. And I did that. And it was very challenging and difficult for that to happen. I mean, my band Utah Carol is, it's just really difficult for musicians to be entrepreneurs and to own a company and to understand the process to own your own property, right? It's also difficult to even give young people the understanding that they need to have intent before they can even get to an ownership mindset. Like you have to actually want to own something. Like, it's just, there's a whole lot that goes into it. And I feel like, so tell me about your companies. You have Chew Entertainment. You're an independent producer. You have a wonderful nonprofit. Can you please very, very briefly talk about those three companies? Because I don't know, have you had them for like 10 or 15 years, or is this?
No, they developed. Again, I tell you, as an outgrowth of my my years in the industry, I've learned what it looks like, and so when I first got during my years, I got involved with television doing Saturday Night Live, and so live television. I got okay, what's it like working in television? Then from there, I went to Showtime at the Apollo and working with Steve Harvey at the Great Apollo Theater. And then also was working in the theater doing, many different things in there. Cause I was like, I got my hustle on, right? So I said, once I get in there, I was in there running. They had a studio up there. I'm in at night. I'm running the studio. So again, get my entrepreneurial juices going and trying different things. While I was still just about still doing Showtime, and then I started working at other things in television. But during those years, I got married to my wife and partner, Vivian Scott Chew now, but she was Vivian Scott, and she was a record company executive at that time. She was vice president at Epic Records, and she was responsible for signing Shabba Ranks and Patra and bringing in that dance hall, that whole thing. So she's the executive behind that whole reggae dance hall movement, because she signed two of the biggest artists that really got that thing going. And so I saw what that side of it looked like as our marriage developed. We didn't start working together at first.
I was just going to ask you how do you make that work, dude? Because I'm in a business with my husband. I'm like, give me tips. Give me tips.
It was an us tips. And a them.
Okay.
She was a them. And I was like, but we loved each other. So, but we didn't work together at first. I had the studio in our first home, and she had an office on the other side, and we'd work all day. And then,
I love her.
And then I'll see you later on at night. I'll see you upstairs, that kind of thing. And then one day she comes over to my studio and she says, "Hey, I think I got a job for you." I was like, "I'll be happy to work for you." And so she hired me to do some stuff, to produce something, and then a couple other things, and then we started doing events together where we would co-produce, and so that started our first company, Chew Entertainment. It was an events and production company that we would do. People would hire us to produce, like the Urban League and other people doing a gala. So we would be the event producers. Our roles in that was symbiotic. It was, she would handle one side of that, and I would handle the entertainment, blah, blah, blah. And we would do that. And we started really getting a lot of wonderful clients. NAACP, Urban League, blah, 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 this one, that one. And we have a lot of annual events that we still do to this day. And that started True Entertainment. She has a company called Time Zone International. When she left Epic Records, she started doing international marketing promotion for artists. And some of her breakout artists at the time just signed, newly signed, Jill Scott, NDRE, Kim, blah, blah, blah. So she had a number of wonderful artists that she helped break out internationally. And so now we got, her company going, and I have my own production company, RC Music, which I do. I used to produce artists and develop artists. So now we got these companies going, and so that it's a lot to juggle, because each of them you have to give them their full value. You don't want to, you want to deface any of the names by not doing the proper diligent work. And I'll say that again, young folks. All right? Do not.
Here comes the lecture, people.
Anybody can slap a name on their wall and get a logo or something, but do not deface that by not doing the diligent, proper work, research, and everything it takes to run a company, including your taxes. All right,
the taxes, that's really important.
Including your taxes. All right, each one of these companies, we have an accountant, that manages
a certified public accountant. You don't get in
trouble.
A certified public accountant. You got to have the certified one, not just any accountant. I actually did a post on LinkedIn about this recently, about when you're an entrepreneur, having the right talent to help you run the business so you don't get in trouble. And I want to ask you about your nonprofit organization, because you and your wife are part of that as well. And it's so funny you said that your wife worked with Jill Scott, because my sentence that I wrote down on my note, I wrote literally, it's my gratitude section, because you have a lot of gratitude and you share a lot of gratitude. You do a lot of work in the church. But I said, to use Jill Scott's words, you seem to be living your life like it's golden. I literally wrote that. And I was asking, how do you express your gratitude for this? And I know that gratitude, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your nonprofit organization, please talk about that, because you're doing a lot. It's, Power to Inspire, right? You have this amazing thing.
So Power to Inspire was born out of the seeded with our parents. Again, started with my mother, altruism. And then with Vivian's mother, her mother was she worked in the church. And she was a church receptionist, the church, everything was church. And so, but she was also out helping with voter registration. So she was also somebody that had a sense of world and community about her. And so Vivian, she had that instilled in her as well. So when I had started going, it started during Black History Month. I'll tell you when it started for me, with thinking about a foundation, or thinking about young people. During Black History, my daughter was, and again, it was a wonderful thing that we work hard and we want to give our children different opportunities. So I had her in private school, and the private school was an all-white private school. All right, one or two Black faces, but my main thing was, I just thought that the opportunity for her in this particular situation was going to be elevated. So yes, we had her in private school, but then I would go to the school during Black History Month, because as a concerned parent, I'm like, well, what's going on? They said, oh yes, we do wonderful things, during Black History Month. I said, well, give me an example. I said, okay. So I attended one of the things when they put on the Martin Luther King reel, and the I Have a Dream speech. Wonderful, as wonderful as that is. But they put that on, and then the discussion was, and I'm listening to some of the interaction. So Martin Luther King, he gave a great speech. He had a dream, and then he died. next. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, wait. You're missing, especially a child in the 60s. I'm like, you missed a whole lot in there. And this is it? So the reason why, so after that, I was like, okay, I got to do something. So I started doing programs in the schools. I started at her school, but then every school that would call me, I'd have a Black History Month program, and I would do something where I'm giving, information and little history through the lens, of music and, delivering it through music. And so we started doing that. And then Vivian had other programs, and we said, why don't we do something together? And then thus was born Power to Inspire. That we wanted to really, again, at the heart of this is altruism and is voting rights. Everything is packed in there because the education that we are seeking to further is giving people not only information but access. So our program, Power to Inspire, yes, we have a summer program which we really get concentrated, but throughout the years we select a handful. I'll have to say a handful. 25 is a handful. All right.
Oh, okay, that's more than a handful.
In the big fabric. In the big fabric. We tried to work with a lot more initially, and then maybe it will continue to grow. But this has been Power to Inspire has been at least 7 years. All right. And so during our program, what we do is we cast a wide net and we select students or young people, and they don't necessarily have to be students, but students of something. All right. You could be informal or you could be street education, doesn't matter. But we're selecting people that we see as people who are forward achievers. Now, forward achievers doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have met, your dream goal, but I have to be able to see in you something that requires me to stop and give you my time. We also add other, professional mentors. We've had people like The Dream, Alicia Keys, blah, 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 blah. We've had wonderful people give of their time, basically give of their time, because there are other programs that, young people have to actually go and pay for. Mm-hmm. We don't require them to pay for it, but we do require them to pay it forward when they have an opportunity. So our program, Power to Inspire, the mission is to bridge the gap between, here we go again, between potential and achievement. You could spend, I had a lot of people that spent a lot of years in music programs coming out in Berkeley, Manhattan, Oberlin, this one, that one. And they're like, okay, now what? How do I get in there? And I've been in that situation where well, how do I get to the other side?
How do you get
well,
to the other
you need
side?
a bridge, and that's what we do. We provide a bridge.
Mm-hmm. I just have a few more minutes with you. I want to. There's a couple areas I still need to get to, but I did actually get two questions from two young people. Speaking of the bridge to get there, and I'm going to ask you these questions. One of them is, how do I get into the music director business? That's the first question. The second question is, and this gets to what you're talking about, what and where are the locations, areas, events, spaces to go in New York to connect with producers and music directors? How do I get invited? And that's what you were just talking about, right? And I know your nonprofit organization, Power to Inspire, is one of the avenues to do that. There's got to be some other opportunities. New York is a beast. I mean, it's like, New York is like, it's a beautiful, wild, sexy, never sleeping beast, So those are the two questions from two young aspiring jazz music students.
So the first one, to be a music director is the first to be able to, within your own system, tap in your own leadership qualities. Again, leadership they're not born, they are bred. All right. I remember, not being that guy that knew how to to be the guy at the top of the operation. I had to learn how to do that by being in there. Now, I did accelerate by being, one of the best musicians in the room, and also being one of the most knowledgeable musicians of the music. So the difference being is that you can have a specific, show or shows, songs within shows that the other musicians need to know. Hey, what's in that? What's the ingredients in that? Well, I, as an arranger, I became that guy. All right, as an arranger, I became the most knowledgeable one, and so they would turn to me and say, "Hey, well, Ray knows. So Ray knows the music better than anybody. He's the leader. Ray knows, and if I'm the one doing that, then I have to also be able to learn how to lead other people and to have their sense of trust. So the leadership is twofold. You have to have the trust of those you are leading and those who you are delivering it to. And so that's something
Beautiful.
that I've learned to do.
That's
and
beautiful.
As a leader, then you are generally the one that is most eligible to be a music director. You are already a music director because you're the band leader. You're already leading the band. The artists will turn to you and say, "Hey, can you do this for me? Can you lead the band for me?" And so that's what the primary role of music director is. Now, given the title in television and other systems, does require you to first get the job, right? So you can say you're a music director, yeah, and okay, music director of what? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, but given an opportunity, you must, it's a good thing that you have to be prepared, because you don't want to get the opportunity and not deliver at the level it needs to be. All right. Because again, those opportunities are rare. They are not equally distributed. If you get an opportunity, you have to make sure. So I hope that answers
that answered number one. Mm-hmm.
Number two, what was the question number two?
Where are the locations, areas, events, spaces to go, connect? How do I get invited?
Okay. So New York. New York is a wonderful place. And some of the differences between that, and I'd say in contrast to LA. LA is wonderful community and all that. But LA is so spread out that, you have to always be in a car. Yeah. If then you have to go from here in the time it takes you to get from one place to the other. New York, especially in Manhattan, is concentrated and compact. You can get to wherever you need to go. Other places, 10 to 15 minutes, you're somewhere else. And so the good thing is how? Well, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of clubs, open mics. I think, and then when you get to know people who are doing it, a lot of people who are doing different things, they like to also go into a lot of these nooks and crannies. And you have to really just place yourself in the vicinity of people who are already doing it. And that is one of the ways to do it. There's no one way to do it. I discovered somebody just recently at the Sugar Bar, which was owned by Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson on 72nd Street between Broadway and West End. I frequent the place, and I they have an open mic on Thursdays. Never know who you're going to see in there. They have big celebrities come through there, Denzel Washington, Quincy Jones, this one, that one. All right, never know. And you never know when somebody steps up to the mic, because, a lot of them are just, people just wanting to have a moment, and just singing and singing from the heart. And then I was in there one night and I heard these two singers, and I really wasn't expecting. I was like, wow, that dude was good, And then I heard another guy during the same set, because usually, you don't hear two really good singers during the same set on some open mic format. And I'll say, wow, these dudes are good. And then I asked them to come and do a couple of shows with me, just kind of feel them out. One of them I'm going to work And I'll say on my project, I'll talk about that. But I'm now going to include one of them on my project. I won't say his name
Wow, that is
until we reveal it.
huge.
Yeah,
From an
I
open
saw
mic?
him on an open mic,
Oh my God.
and this kid, and he blew
Wow.
me away. I was like, and then he came, and I did a show during Harlem Week, an outdoor festival, and I invited him up, and I was like, okay,
He knocked it out of the ballpark.
I'm
He
gonna work
knocked it
with
out of the
this kid.
ballpark,
So
didn't he?
he did his again. Opportunity meets that access point, and
You didn't
preparation.
mention the church at all in opportunities to for aspiring musicians, jazz or whatever. You didn't say anything about, is that a possibility as well?
Yeah, the church community is far, wide, and deep,
Okay.
and a lot of the really terrific musicians. Even the kid I mentioned, he sings in the church all the time. So I could have very well have heard him in in the church doing singing in the church, one of the churches that I attend, and so I'm a part of the church community here in New York, and now that nationally, I've had the great opportunity of working with all of our great gospel legends, going from Yolanda Adams, Kirk Franklin, Shirley Caesar, blah blah blah. I did this show called The Celebration of Gospel on BET. That was my first special, and during that time, my 8 years doing it, I worked with every major gospel artist, and so I really got ingratiated into the whole national gospel scene, and got to know all of the big, pastors and churches across the country. And so Vivian and I, we travel across the country, and we spend time with the communities. We get to know the systems. And so, back to the answer to,
I love that, the systems.
Yeah.
You've always
Yeah.
been like that since you were a little boy, looking at the systems, trying to figure out navigation and being curious. I hear a through line with everything you're talking about is that you have a natural curiosity, which I don't think can be taught. I think that's something that you are born with. I don't know how to teach curiosity, but you have it. And I love that when I hear you talk about all this work, and I just have a couple more things. One, this is like off the ball. And I love that what you just talked about with the church, because, we're in a very difficult time in the United States, and it's easy to succumb to darkness right now. It would be very easy. And especially when you have an artistic spirit and artistic temperament. And I know some artists say, well, the darkness is what drives me. It's like, it can't drive you forever. You know what I mean? So having, for some, not for all, I mean, everyone doesn't go to church. Some people bring their church with them, right? They carry it in their heart and their soul and their spirit, and they don't have to go to a building. But I think, for many people, especially now, having church as an anchor, having religion as an anchor, or spiritual connection, to the universe, to the main operating system, whatever you want to call it, it can keep you from succumbing to darkness, which to your point, to go circling back to your earlier, story, you succumb to darkness and you can't come back. So I really love that you have connection in that way. And I'm starting to think about that myself when I go on my own sort of, spiritual journey, things like that. So thank you for bringing that up, because I don't think we have enough of that. And we're going to need a lot between now and November 8th.
I suppose I'm alive. I suppose I'm a sheep. I suppose you think I spend my nights crying. I'm just tired of being lost. I'm just tired of being lost.
I actually have some rapid fire questions because you've been so generous with your time, Mr. Chu. Mr. Chew. I feel like I want to see chew, 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 chew your bubble gum, chew, chew, chew. You know what I mean? So rapid fire questions. Who is the most fun musician or group you've ever worked with? And I will never ask you who is the least fun because I'm not trying to give you a career-ending injury right now.
Well, no, I think. One of my, I'll have to talk about one of my most important and potent experiences. All right, and that is when I was working with Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson. We did the first Live Aid concert.
Oh,
and that was huge. All right, we remember that was a worldwide event that happened simultaneous, and I was with Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson. Teddy Pendergrass had just, he was still in a wheelchair, but he had come back from his injury, and this was at the Philadelphia Stadium, and there were over 100,000 people in that stadium, and it was simulcast, and it was just a huge event. You had all these great artists on it, Paul McCartney, Madonna, blah blah blah. It goes on and on and on. And we had a moment where the whole stadium stood still as, we brought out Teddy Pendergrass, who was in a wheelchair. Remember, he's from Philadelphia.
mm-hmm,
And it was a big story. That was the first time the audience had seen him since his accident. And he came out and sang Reach Out and Touch. So in moments like that, I've had, great moments, seminal moments, historical moments. Again, the moment with the inauguration of our first Black president, Barack Obama. That was, again, seminal. These were, hey, stop the history pages here right now. Let's make sure we get all of this. And he had, it was his idea. He curated his own ball. And his ball, he called it the neighborhood ball. And on this ball, the lineup was Beyonce, Jay-Z, Maroon 5, Mariah Carey, Alicia Keys, Stevie Wonder, Sting, on and on. Mary J. Blige. And I was music director for the whole thing. And so it was just a wonderful moment to be his part of history and to be given the responsibility to handle that.
That's so beautiful. All right. So which musician made you work the absolute hardest, that put you through the ringer and that brought out the best in your production skills?
Anita Baker.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Really? Anita Baker?
No, I'll tell you why.
No hesitation at all. Like, you've thought about this before.
The reason is that Anita Baker, you hear this great voice, and I'm only going to speak in positive. When I worked with her as a music director, it was because I loved her voice even before I ever met her. That voice is just like a fine glass of wine, all right. And when I worked with her as an artist, she does challenge you. Anita will challenge you, all right. And so, and just navigating all of the things that happen in the life of working with her on the road and all that. So I would say she was one of the most challenging, but also at the same time, one of the most fulfilling.
I love that. And what is one of the hugest mistakes you made in your career that you're glad you made because it sets you up for success now, if you're willing to share?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I've learned is that you can learn more from your mistakes than you can by your victories. And that being said is that I got a little cocky with myself early on because I had early success, and I started, getting what Deepak would say is an inflated sense of self, right? An inflated sense of self. You think you're bigger than you are, all right? And your head is bigger than the doors you walk through, then you're in trouble. And so I learned the hard way, to uh, certainly be humble in spirit. That doesn't mean you start bowing down before men and women. What it does mean is that you learn that in a historical sense, and I'll give you some humility. We think, and you talked about, the times we're in. Yeah, the times we're in, they're tough, lots going on, this and that. But by the way, this is one civilization. There have been other civilizations that have come and gone. I think the people during the times of the Egyptians, people thought that would be forever. Lasted 3,000 years, whatever. And then gone. All right? And so, yeah. And there are civilizations that are buried under the sea that have come and gone. There have been empires that we've been aware of that, I'm sure during the Roman Empire, they thought that would never end. And then one day it did. All right. It came to a halt, then to a grinding halt. So that's the times we are under difficult. And yes, things are going on, but we'll get through this. All right.
I love you for saying that.
We'll get through this.
I love you for saying that, because I feel like, like I said, you can succumb to the darkness, or you can, try to just take everything in stride and realize that we are going to get through it. I mean, I was listening to a podcast with Gary Vee, and he said something similar, but he didn't talk about civilization. He said something a little bit more, but he said, the dinosaurs didn't know they were going extinct, but they still kept living until they weren't. I thought that was like crazy to think about that. Okay, so what AI tool do you use?
A few.
Really? You use AI?
Yeah, but I use it only in the context of a tool. All right.
Wow.
And so, but I'm not using it to generate creativity.
Okay, that's fair.
So there's a difference there. I use it to help support my creativity and just give me some other options and things. Do
you have one to recommend?
AI, excuse me?
Do you have a tool to recommend that you
No,
like?
I do not.
Oh, okay.
No,
that's fair.
And I wouldn't specifically, do that, branding wise.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would do that because if I do that, then they're gonna have to pay me. Again, knowing your value.
But we did mention Dodge. We did mention Dodge earlier.
Well, no, but that was just.
I'm just teasing.
But yeah.
But AI. I'm happy to hear you use it.
Now, there are a few of them that work.
And
I'll just speak on that briefly, just to say that there's a lot of people that are, a lot of artists. They're again, whoa, AI. Hey, calm down.
Yeah.
AI. First of all, it's not going anywhere.
No.
Okay. You're not going to be able to put that toothpaste back in the tube. So you might as well embrace it. Might as well make it part of, your creative system. And the operative is your creative system. So nothing really displaces my creative system. I'm at the heart and at the center of that. And any tool that I decide to use is a tool for me.
And that is Ray Chu as music director. And then my last question for you is, what is your favorite episode of Dancing with the Stars that you worked on? Are you able to tell me what your favorite, because you're like a superstar with this show. You're a superstar. So do you have a favorite show? Do you have the top 3 favorites? Episodes? Can you name it, or is it just too much?
You know what? My favorite is when we get to the finale. And at the finale, I tell my team, welcome, as we're preparing for that show, I said, welcome to the audition for next season.
I love it.
So, yeah, it's all because it's a journey. And again, the name of my upcoming album is called My Journey. And it consists of many sub-journeys. When we get through a season, that's a journey of itself. It's a lot going on. It's a lot to navigate. There are always a lot of challenges. Every episode we have something different to do. As soon as we prepare, then we do the episode. And then as soon as that is I kid you not, as soon as that is over, I got emails talk about the next episode. All right.
I love it.
So we don't even have time, and the very next day we have to basically flush, our systems of the previous episode and on to the next. So I really don't get a chance to, focus on what the best of them. There've been a lot of fun ones.
Is that the pile? I heard you talking about the pile.
Oh yeah, the pile. Well, yeah, the pile. Exactly.
Is that part of it?
Responsibilities, the pile of things to do. They come in piles. The emails come in piles. I kid you not. During the season, I have to have 2 separate, email accounts because they come in in such batches. It takes me hours to just get through the emails, and so I have somebody else helping me. My chief of staff, sifting through which emails are the top, my top 10. Let's get to those. Sitting on a hot stove. What's Dancing with the Stars emails? What's other stuff? And when we're in season, I got to focus.
Is that why it took like 7 years to get you on my show? I mean, I'm like, it's because I was in the pile.
Yeah, and you know what? And I'm glad you stayed because I'm enjoying this. And we actually made up, because we've been on for a while, so we made up some good time today.
You are a consummate. Right? You are a consummate storyteller. I mean, like what you are a wealth and you're a giver. You are a giver for real. I mean, 100%. And it's I understand why you have been chosen by so many people. And to me, if I were to come up with what I would like your legacy to be, would be that you would help produce more Ray Chews, right? Definitely. And just to be very selfish, more Black Ray Chews, female or male. But of course, I have a preference. I have 3 sons, so I'm always like, I want to help, my Black sons. But to me, that would be a legacy. Like and you have a lot already in a legacy space. I mean, obviously, I'm sure somebody's going to be working on a book for you. Like if they're not working on a book, I don't know. I don't know what to say. There's got to be a book coming out. I'd love to help you with it. But just imagining if you could take and extract everything that you shared today and pour it into these young people that are coming to learn from you. And then they come out with an opportunity and a realized vision and come back and say, I'm here in large part because of, what Mr. Chu taught me. And I'm so grateful. That's what I would.
Actually, we do. We have a lot of young people. That's why in our program, we do, it's one-on-one. I'll be in the studio tonight with a young person from our program who he expressed a real desire to get in. I saw his email. They pulled it out. I spoke to him on the phone. I said, okay, you have an opportunity today. So we have him in the studio tonight, and we're going to see what he's got. Again, opportunities are not spread all over but when it comes your way, there it is. And by the way, I have, there's been a number of wonderful professionals that I have mentored and given opportunity to that have gone on and done real well. So yes, I am in the interest of replicating what it took to help breed my life and to breed the life of the next Ray Chu or whoever's coming up. I am very interested in it. I want that to happen. I want to see more of. I am very secure with my place in life and in society. Because there's some people who get threatened by having others and other talented people. I embrace it.
Yeah.
There are people who are doing really well that that are my friends, and I celebrate their successes with them when they win awards and when they get things happening. I call them up and say, hey, congratulations, beautiful, that kind of stuff.
I love it. Well, you know what? This has been a phenomenal conversation, and it was worth the wait. It was so worth the wait. I mean, I feel so liberated and excited. So I want to thank you so much for coming on my show, the Honest Field Guide podcast, Mr. Chu. And for everybody that wants to connect with Ray, if you do a perplexity.ai search, if you do a chat GPT search, and of course, if you do a Google search, you will find out a lot more about what Ray has done over his career and his lifetime. There's just too much to cover. It's just extraordinary career. And you can also, of course, what's the best website that people can find out more about you with your own, using your own voice? Which one?
Yes, allthingschew.com. That'll have everything about me and my wife and our foundation. Also, you're going to hear about my album coming up called My Journey.
Yes.
And so you can visit me at Ray Chew Live on on IG and X, at Ray Chew Live, IG at Ray Chew Live X. I have a single out right now that features Stephanie Mills, Kid Capri, MC Light, and Dougie Fresh, called Jam. We were working at that. Was, it's been making a lot of noise, especially over the summer. Party record. And upcoming, the album is going to be Ray Chew and Friends, inspired by Quincy Jones type of things.
I love it.
Yeah, and the first quarter of 2025 will be coming out with the album. And so, yeah, I'm easy to find. Hey, look me up, IG. I'll see the messages. I'll answer a couple of them.
I love it. Get out of the pile. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ray. I appreciate it. And everybody that's tuned in to listen, we will see you next time on my show, The Honest Field Guide Podcast. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
The Honest Field Guide is produced by the team at Burke Creative, where brand and multi-channel strategies are designed to help you get attention, grow, scale, and keep up with the pace of change. The music on the podcast is written and performed by Utah Carroll. You can find their songs everywhere online to buy or stream. The opinions expressed on the Honest Field Guide are solely those of the host and guests.